School board members are responsible for the budget, the superintendent, and the policies that support them. We're going to spend the next 7 minutes analyzing 3 policies about school board members. Policy BBA is about our duties. Policy BC is about school board meetings. Policy BCBI is about public comment at those meetings. Okay, so now we're just going to talk a little bit through my annotation process. So this looked like a long list. So at first I just did what I would tell our students to do and looked at all the verbs. So I circled them green and then tried to figure out what they're asking us to do. And so I had already started to underline and think through the what. So like number 6, recognize what, and when I summarized it, the fact that we need to come together. Number 7, inform what about appearances. And so I just go on to do that down the list. When I started to read number 9, making no statements, announcements, or press publicity release, I just started to underline that, being public at all is the main point there. What are we familiarizing ourselves with? Pretty much all rules. And so you can see like working what as a team, voting how for the good, accepting what majority of the vote. And that was how I analyzed this policy. Just for your notes and the version you have in front of you, I annotated in the margin that the verbs are green, the main points are underlined, and then I went a step further and tried to bucket the items into themes and categories. So overall, the expectations outline how we show up, how we prepare to show up, what should happen, like the protocols for publicity. So this is how I summarized the BC policy. I can see it's basically about meetings, and it's about 3 different types of meetings: regular meetings, work sessions, and executive sessions. So I think this is a good time to think about what those could look like, because, it goes on to talk a little bit about telephone meetings, but I think it maybe could use some updating to 2019 to talk about video conferencing and other tech features for meetings. And basically, this is where the information lives for when we meet and what we do in those meetings. Next, we're going to look at the BC policy, which is about board meetings. So you can see that they happen on the first and last Monday of each month. They're for formal actions. They're to be posted in advance. I put a question mark by local organ because I didn't know what that meant. And now we get into executive session. And a lot of people don't know what happens because we disappear, but what we talk about are student discipline, property, individual personnel, and we are also permitted to hold interviews for senior leaders. As I kept reading, I see that quorum is important. And, I mentioned we go missing, and sometimes it's fast and sometimes it's not. And I've heard people ask about, does it have to be during the meeting? Can it be before or after? So I put a question mark to think about my constituents. I kept reading, and we sign this paper every time. So I put a check, and I was like, oh, that must be the notarized affidavit. The last policy we're going to look at is BCBI, and it's about public comment at board meetings. So I already did most of what we've already discussed as it regards to annotating the highlights and putting question marks next to anything I had questions about. So the summary is that public comment happens at regular meetings, not work sessions. This policy also talks a little bit about the power of the chair during public comment to preside as necessary and maintain that all comments are appropriate. And then finally, I just put a note to myself to ask a question or bring it up later at another time. So this is the end of those 3 policies.